the reality is that, it's just been hard to get to the point where we're at now, but I've learned so much from it. It's been the most educational thing that I've ever gone through in my life. It's like all the years of formal education compressed into 4 or 5 years at this point. And that even undersells it. I've learned vastly more in the last 12 months running Freetrail than I did in my entire education before that.
Welcome to Long Run Labs, a weekly podcast from the team behind For the Long Run, telling the stories of those running the outdoor industry where endurance and entrepreneurship meet. And we are back with Dylan Bowman. I've got the Debo costume for those who are watching on video, Freetrail shirt, and the SFRC hat. We have Dylan Bowman in the flesh on the other side. Dylan, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
JL, thanks for having me on this new platform of yours, buddy. We are text exchangers. We think very similar, I think, about our sport, our market, our various professional aspirations. So I'm really happy to do this. Thanks for having me on.
Likewise. Before we dive into it, I'm going to ask you a question that I always ask on For the Long Run. Who is Dylan?
Who is Dylan? What am I even anymore?
I feel like you're trying to figure this out all the time too.
I totally am. I'm a 39-year-old dad and husband and family man, first and foremost. And settling into a great life there. We live in the Bay Area in Marin County, in my opinion, the greatest, most beautiful place in the world, and also the best place to trail run, which has been the core and center of my life now for going on 17 years, basically, at this point. I was a professional athlete for a long time. I guess still technically am, although certainly haven't felt like one for a long time.
I see those long runs you've been posting on Strava lately.
It's freaking a grim scene for me in my athletic career now. But I have failed to make a comeback about 10,000 times at this point. So I'm sort of circling around to the idea of maybe embracing official retirement here in the near future, but not quite yet. But anyway, I'm a dad, a husband, a longtime professional athlete, and with the last 4 or 5 years, been mostly focused on Freetrail, which is my media business that is sort of consumer facing in trail running, covering what's happening in this rapidly growing sport that you and I both, operate deeply within. It's, I think, the best sport in the world, an amazing community. It's given me such a profoundly amazing life, and I'm lucky to make my living within it. And as you know, also have a little side project called Second Nature that you and I talk about frequently, which just sort of covers the business side of the outdoor industry that I do with my great friend and collaborator, Aaron Lutzi. So between all that stuff, I remain very, very busy, but I am a blessed man.
That is a wonderful summary, and I can't wait to dive into all of that. We're going to start with the running side of things, and we'll get into the business side and that intersection. Again, this is a new podcast, Long Run Labs, still trying to figure out my footing with it. I think this is the 5th episode I've recorded, so give me a little grace on this. But I wanted to thank you for Second Nature in particular. Those who have listened to the first couple of episodes or have listened to my other podcast, For the Long Run, you've heard me reference this perhaps more than anything else I've referenced on that podcast. I've learned a ton. I've been on the podcast talking about brand versus performance marketing.
Probably our most popular episode ever, too.
It was super fun. And specifically the episode 100 that you guys did, I stopped my run and I was like, this is it. I am changing my life because of what I've learned on this episode. I told you before we started recording that I am quitting my job and going all in on what I've been building the last few years. And I take a lot of courage in the ability to do that and the desire to do that from not just our conversations offline, but the conversations that you and Aaron have had. And I just want to say thank you. If it's happening like that for me, I can only imagine that it's happening for other people. So I just love thinking about the ripple effect of what you guys are doing and like what it's inspiring and what it's going to enable other people to create. So thank you.
Man, it's an honor. And I really appreciate you saying that. And as I said to you before we started recording, too, I've felt your momentum in this direction palpably whenever we communicate. And there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to be successful in this new endeavor. But that does not mean that it's going to be easy, is something we try and get across on.
Business is hard.
Business is hard. And you know all about that already. And I'm sure you're coming into it with eyes wide open. But yeah, it's going to be a great journey and it's going to be well worth it. And I'm glad that in some ways Second Nature pushed you towards that eventuality.
For sure. We go wax poetic about how great that podcast is for this entire episode, but we're not going to do that, unfortunately. Let's wind it back. More than 17 years ago, you've been a professional athlete for about 17 years, as you said. I want to know about Dylan's first run. When did you lace up those first shoes? And what were those shoes? Not Speedland back then.
No.
Right?
Yeah, it was definitely not Speedlands at that point. I grew up a team sport athlete, eventually the first incarnation of my athletic life as a lacrosse player. And my role on the team was really to be the hustle guy, to run up and down the field, to fight for ground balls, make plays in transition, just, be the guy who doesn't get tired sort of thing. And so I always knew I sort of had this aptitude for endurance. And I also had like a natural curiosity for it. I was the type of kid who watched the Ironman on TV every year when they put together that hour-long supercut of what happened in the race. For some reason, Ironman Kona, even though I've never done a triathlon still to this day, has always been something that really spoke to me. And so I've always had that, I think, endurance curiosity. And so after I was done playing lacrosse, I guess to answer your real question of like, what was my first run like for exercise? It was probably in college. I remember a couple of occasions where realizing that I had this like natural endurance and, ability to just cover ground. I remember talking to a guy who was on the cross country team where I went to school and him saying that they ran 70 miles a week in training. And to me at the time, it felt like, what? That's 10 miles a day, bro. That's insane. And thinking, well, maybe I should just go out for a run and see what it feels like. And I remember around our campus in Fort Collins, Colorado, it's probably like 1 square mile. So if you run around the entire thing, it's like, 1 mile up, 1 mile down, 1 mile across, 1 mile back. So 4 miles sort of thing. I remember coming home feeling like I had just conquered Mount Everest, like totally smashed. No one will ever understand what I just put myself through. And I am the world's greatest endurance athlete.
How long did that feeling last?
I don't remember, dude. It was a time in my life where, I was very focused on playing ball and also focused on a lot of other less healthy things, shall we say. So once I got out of college and I moved up to Aspen full time, that's when I really started like pursuing running for health and for daily exercise because I didn't have the outlet of going to practice. But I still remember those early runs of just the 3 or 4 milers where you just felt super proud. And then, of course, as everybody will understand who listens to the show, quickly, especially when you're building that momentum, you start seeing real progress and that just becomes so addicting. And I remember very clearly that period of my running journey.
So what happens next? You're in Aspen. The aspens are aspening. It's freaking beautiful. Tell me more about the entry into longer distance running than just those 3 to 4 mile runs around Fort Collins.
Yeah. So I was always an athlete and always like fancied myself as an athlete. And so when I was no longer playing team sports, it wasn't long until I started to feel kind of lost in that new reality. Like I said, in college, I also spent a lot of time doing college things and that maintained in my behavior patterns.
Most of my running in college was like after 2 a.m. home from the bar.
Totally.
So.
I did a few of those myself. Anyway, so I was living in Aspen, which also has, a very healthy party culture. And, it wasn't long until I started feeling like, wow, like I'm feeling a little unhealthy. I'm feeling like I'm staying up too late too often. I'm feeling far removed from feeling like a fit athlete. I need to get back in shape. And the easiest thing for me to do is just start running because I was living in Aspen, Colorado at 8,000 feet in the beautiful Elk Mountains of Colorado. It was natural that I was just going to start running up and down mountains. And it wasn't long after that to where I discovered the sport of trail running. I just discovered the Leadville 100. I discovered especially Anton Krupicka and his amazing blog. And I was hooked, bro. I dove straight into it, and I set my sights on the Leadville 100. Ultimately did that for the first time in 2010. Finished third place, really surprised myself, surprised my family and friends who were there crewing and pacing for me. And that was just the start of this chapter of my life, which has been, 17 years at this point.
I talked with David Callahan of Ultra Sign Up quite a lot about Leadville, actually, in our episode. It's one of his favorite brands based on how they're approaching the outdoor industry and community and being the connective tissue to these communities growing nationwide. What was it about Leadville, and what was it about that 100-mile distance that piqued your curiosity? And Anton's writing, and to go from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 at 10,000 feet, that's no joke. You finished third. What was that adventure like? I mean, the course is awesome and would be totally different if it were at sea level. Like, it would be a really, really fast course, but it's really hard because it's so high. Tell me about what that was like.
Yeah, I mean, the altitude certainly wasn't an issue for me living at 8,000 feet at that point, but the distance and, just the art of running was totally unfamiliar to me at that point in my life. Like I said, I do have a natural, I think predisposition towards being decent at it, but I was certainly not an experienced or well-formed athlete as a runner at that point in my life. I was 22, bro. Like, it's unusual for 22-year-olds to jump in 100-milers now. In that day and age, it was
Right.
very unusual, with the exception of Anton, who was, again, my earliest and biggest inspiration. And I think he was around that age when he won Leadville for the first time. He's a couple of years older than I am. And, I've been lucky to, get to know him a bit and, feel like we're at least loose friends at this point. But, that was really it for me, is like, I had always been an athlete. I was no longer an athlete at this point in my life. And Leadville gave me the chance to be an athlete again, or at least like point my athletic ambitions towards something. And I needed it at that point. And really, like, I need it again now in some ways, in that, like, Freetrail and the things that I do outside of running have, in no uncertain terms, like, kind of forced me out of the normal training regimen that I've become accustomed to. And I just think it really is important in life to, like, set ambitious goals and move towards them. At least I'm the type of person that without that, it's very easy for me to fall into the patterns of, like, staying out late at the bar and doing things that aren't necessarily in your body and mind's best interests. And so Leadville was a really important thing for me at the right time in my life. And it wasn't anything more than just feeling like, wow, that's cool. Anton did it when he was about my age. This guy is a really compelling and interesting character. I want to try this also. And like I said, it opened a door that, I haven't gone back through at this point. Like, it's been the center of my life ever since.
And when did the professionalization of running occur for you in relation to, you ran Leadville for the first time in 2010?
So actually, after Leadville, when I finished third, it was a big surprise, like I said to everybody. I think it was the following year in 2011 that I got sponsored for the first time by La Sportiva, who also, I think, was Anton's sponsor at the time. So it was,
became teammates.
Yeah, it was cool. But of course, in those days, it was like, okay, we'll give you 5 pairs of shoes a year and, a t-shirt. And you're a quote unquote sponsored athlete. And of course, at that time in my life, I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. I was the type of kid, as I said earlier, I've always been an athlete. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, am I a professional athlete? Of course, like, professional is doing a lot of work in that description, but, it certainly wasn't how I made money, but it made me feel like I had a place in the sport and, like, there was maybe a future in the sport. And I genuinely just love it. I loved the game then. I still love it now. And that's why it just, like, became easy to continue falling down that rabbit hole. And then, I guess to fast forward a little bit, the time I was paid as an athlete for the first time was by Pearl Izumi, who was, an important brand in the space for a couple of years and an important moment of time in the sport. And those are also some fun memories. And again, it wasn't like I was making significant money that I could live off of or anything, but I don't know, just an important milestone moment in my career where it felt like I was, making progress and professionalizing, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a signal that, you're going in the right direction. And as that signal gets stronger and stronger, you link up with North Face, you link up with Red Bull, partners that you maintain for quite a long time. What was that journey like? I know you've talked at length about your relationship with Red Bull via Aaron Lutzy,
Yep.
the athlete manager at the time. How did you get into those spaces, and what was your quote unquote secret for staying on contract?
I'm so glad you're asking me this. I'm not sure I've spoken about it in detail anywhere else, but the North Face was a really important thing for me. Pearl Izumi was kind of exiting the running market, and it was at the time when I was really like emerging into my prime as an athlete. I went to the North Face Bear Mountain 50 miler, a race that no longer exists, but that was part of the Endurance Challenge series.
Best series ever.
It was so good. It was so good.
That race it rained every year.
Really, the year I did it, it was spectacular weather. But I went there, and of course, there's a few North Face athletes there, a few like North Face sports marketing people, and I won the race. And that set in motion something that would have so many downstream implications. It's kind of crazy to think about in retrospect. But I met Lisa Burns, a person who I'm sure your listeners had never heard of, but a really awesome and important person in my life. She ultimately recruited me to the North Face athlete team. She was the sports marketing manager for the brand at that time and got me ingratiated into the North Face program. And I should say here too, the whole theme of what I'm trying to get across with this answer is how important it is to build positive relationships with people over time. Because once Lisa had established that, that I was potentially a good recruit for the team, she then solicited the opinion of the other people on the team, of whom I had friendships with, people like Mike Foote, Stephanie Howe, Mike Wolf, Timothy Olson was there at the time. And they all vouched for me. They said, oh yeah, Dylan would be a great member of the team. Lo and behold, I get a contract from the North Face, which really was amazing. Then fast forward 2 or 3 years, Lisa announces that she's leaving the North Face to go to Red Bull. And then Lisa set into motion connecting me with Aaron Lutzy, who was to become my athlete manager at Red Bull. And now, of course, as you know, Jonathan, Aaron Lutzy is one of my best friends in the world. And I was connected to him through Red Bull, where he was my athlete manager for 7 or 8 years before he departed. So that's kind of the story. It started with Lisa Burns and, her giving me an opportunity. And I can recall a couple of times where I've sent her messages of just like, thank you. Like, I hope it brings you satisfaction to know that you have opened doors for me and like really provided me with opportunities that I've cherished and provided me again, like with a friend now and a partner in Aaron Lutzy, who, we have our own like fun project that we work on together. So that's kind of the story of the North Face and Red Bull, how it all came to be and what the benefit's been in my career.
I love it. It's like the ability to highlight that somebody took a bet on you or somebody was willing to put their name behind you and develop you and work with you and nurture you. Like, I think about the 10 and a half years I spent at Inside Tracker. And, when I met the CEO and founder, Ronnie and Gil, in 2014, I was 24 years old. I didn't really know what I was doing, but they like saw a version of me that I didn't even see. And they're like, we're going to take this guy and turn him into something.
Yeah.
And it's like really cool. And you can look back at people in your life who I don't want to say are responsible for, but enable like such awesome stuff to come from the door that they opened and held open for you and invited, not just held open for you, but invited you in. Like, she invited you into North Face. You had still had to walk through the door and compete and do the things. Same thing with Red Bull. And now here we are 15 years later, still talking about how memorable that moment was.
Yeah, and I think it's important, and it's something that I try to do with Freetrail too, is like, I really want to be able to do similar stuff in my career. Like, when it's all said and done, I would be disappointed if there aren't people out in the world who would view, my contribution in a similar way. I would feel that's a failure.
I was going to ask in a similar light, like, is Freetrail your legacy? Is that how Dylan adds value to the sport for decades to come? Like, first, what is Freetrail for those who don't know? And what's the genesis?
So Freetrail, again, is sort of a media and events company in trail running, podcasts, YouTube, newsletter. We own 2 races. We have a coaching business. We have a robust community that's global. We travel to a bunch of races to just kind of shine a light on what's happening in the sport. And really, like, I don't know, I view us as pouring gasoline on the fire of this like rapid growth and professionalization in the sport and helping people understand it and become fans of it. As you and I know, the sport is so special in so many different ways. There's so many amazing characters, so many amazing events and races and different terrain and so many ways to engage with that it's nonstop entertainment. And I guess, to answer the second part of your question, yeah, I mean, like, I definitely view Freetrail as being not only the present, but the future of my professional life and my way of continuing to engage with the community that I love and that's given me so much over the last 17 years. But I have to say, I definitely have complicated feelings towards it too. Like, it really has taken more out of me than I could have ever imagined. At the same time, as I said at the beginning, I feel incredibly blessed to do what I do for a living, but it's not clear to me like how long I will be able to do this for and what incarnations Freetrail might take in the future.
Why do you think that is?
First of all, just the practical realities of my life and my health and stuff. Like, I travel nonstop. I really do like squeeze a lot out of myself too. I did a lot of the public things and put a lot of effort into it. And it's exhausting, frankly, to just be on, to be traveling, to be public facing, to be talking, of course, there's so much other stuff that happens behind the scene just in terms of nurturing relationships and blocking and tackling and managing finances and ensuring that the team's feeling good. It's just been a lot, and it's still a small and maturing sport. And so the reality is that, it's just been hard to get to the point where we're at now. And part of me questions, as I also have a 2.5-year-old son, how long I'm going to be able to operate in the same way and at the same intensity that I am now. Frankly, I don't want to work as hard as I do. And it's just the reality of what we need to do in order to have, a business that keeps us all employed. But, and we can go into some of the details. I've learned so much from it. It's been the most educational thing that I've ever gone through in my life. It's like all the years of formal education compressed into 4 or 5 years at this point. And that even undersells it. I've learned vastly more in the last 12 months running Freetrail than I did in my entire education before that. And it's definitely like given me an opportunity to have a second chapter in the sport, which is invaluable for professional athletes. And that, is something that I'm also really grateful for.
Hi, friends. Are you enjoying this episode? That's great. Would you do us a favor? Copy the episode link in your podcast player and share it over on LinkedIn with one thing that you're enjoying about the conversation. This is a new show, and we can't wait to continue to grow this new platform. Doing this will help more people find the podcast and make sure it's all sustainable. Thanks in advance, and enjoy. This episode of Long Run Labs is brought to you by beehiiv, the email platform we've trusted for over 2 years to send our weekly newsletter. They just keep getting better, now with a brand new and no-code website builder and an ad network that helps you earn while you write. It's never been easier to grow your audience and also your revenue. The best part? You get a free 30-day trial and 20% off your first 3 months just for being a listener. Whether you're starting from scratch or ready to level up, this platform has your back, just like it has ours. Check out the link in the show notes to grab your discount and start building. The media landscape has changed. It's no longer Sports Illustrated telling the stories. It's the Freetrails, it's the single tracks, it's things like that where you, Finn, really anyone can take a camera and a mic and a videographer and capture content and turn it into a cool story. Like I followed my own 50K at Black Canyon with an iPhone and made a 90-second video of it. And like, it's not the same caliber of storytelling as what Freetrail does or what Finn does with long form documentaries, but like anybody has access to publish content at this point. How does Freetrail stay ahead of the curve of this like content machine that everyone is vying for everyone's attention in this like attention starved economy?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I don't know, frankly. That's part of the reason why I'm like, I don't know what our future is, because it has become so fragmented and there are no moats. Like there's nothing that protects a business like ours, right? Like anybody can do what we do, more or less. My point is that, yeah, it's really hard to differentiate. And I don't know, I have complicated feelings about this because at the same time, I'm like, wow, like the sport is so freaking noisy right now. Like, how do I even keep up, let alone like, how do I break through and make our content worth something? Does the world need the Freetrail podcast? Maybe not. I definitely have an eye towards like, okay, well, if we are going to survive, we do have to have something that differentiates us. And so we've done a bunch of things that are novel. We have our fantasy trail running platform. We do the Trail Runner of the Year vote at the end of the year. We have TrailCon that's coming up. That's going to be an important sort of tentpole moment for us annually over the years to come. We own 2 race events ourselves. So like our business is diversified enough to, I think, withstand any issues that might come about just by virtue of the fact that there's already a million podcasts. There's going to be millions more. I guess those are examples of things that I've tried to do to make Freetrail more resilient, I guess you could say, or just like give us a diversified number of touch points with the sport that ultimately, might give us a little bit more staying power as a business.
I'm going to push back on something you said. You said there are no moats. Why do you think I'm pushing back on that piece in particular?
I mean, what you're going to say is that the personality is the moat, right? Like,
nope.
What are you going to say?
I think the reason that you have such a hard time, this is me putting on my like professor hat. I think a piece of why you have a hard time seeing what the future could look like in a scaled back version of your function with it is because, and please don't take this the wrong way, like Freetrail is now bigger than Dylan, right? You've catalyzed it and created this initial momentum, but now like community is the moat. The people that you've brought together and the interactions that those people have when you have nothing to do with it, like physically, I've seen this interaction happen at races where people meet up because they're stoked on the fact that, somebody's wearing the Freetrail shirt or Freetrail hat or whatever. Like you did that. And as long as you keep fostering that like community experience and you have these touch points where people can interact with you or the other people or the other podcasts within the network at the races, at TrailCon or whatever, like everyone's craving in this like attention starved environment. Everybody's still craving the real connection, the stuff that happens, between the start and the finish line or at the beer tent or whatever. I think that Freetrail has a quite serious moat when it comes to people.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that. And it really is something that we're proud of and take seriously too. And we're just really grateful for the people who do support us and consider themselves part of a broader Freetrail community. And yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think this moment in media is really interesting. I think it's a good thing that anybody can buy an inexpensive microphone and start a podcast and get their thoughts out into the world. I mean, thank goodness I had that opportunity myself. And so shame on me if I'm like, hey, get off my lawn. There's too many podcasts at this point. But the fact is that it is a noisier environment. You do have to probably work harder in order for your content to feel valuable and relevant, quote unquote. So those are things that I think about, but genuinely, like, I've been in the game for a long time. I know a lot about the sport. I know a lot of people within the sport. I do love the sport. And as long as that's the case, like, I do have confidence that there will be a reason for us to exist within it the reason I brought up the personality thing is that I really view in media that is the thing that matters in this day and age, because there's nothing preventing somebody from starting a podcast tomorrow. The people who are successful are the people who can build audience, and the way that you build audience is by, being a compelling person who people want to hear from. I don't fancy myself as a very interesting person. I don't actually fancy myself as a very good podcaster either, compared to a lot of the other people in the profession. I do love it. I do really enjoy it. I'm a very social person, and having conversations with people is, my favorite pastime. And so the fact that I'm able to call it my job is, just something that I probably should be more grateful for than I am, but I still am deeply grateful for it.
Somebody said to me once that it's clear that the content that I create is for me, not selfishly, but like I'm personally interested in it, right? Like if I wanted the biggest podcast in running, I wouldn't operate for the long run the way I operate for the long run. I wanted to have those conversations because I want to have those conversations, not because it's going to skyrocket me to the top of the list. Shout out to Jason Fitzgerald and Freetrail and all the people that are at the top of the list that have done it differently. For me, it's like the deep and the rich, compelling conversations. It seems like you're doing it like you just enjoy, the windshield time. It comes out that way. And like the way that you and Aaron engage and interact on Second Nature, it's just like two buds at the bar talking shop. And that's the vibe that I go for with mine. That's what personally I'm distracted constantly, except when I'm podcasting. Yep. I don't know what it is, but when I put my thing on Do Not Disturb and the mic is in front of my face, or I'm sitting down with someone, like that's like a sacred space and I cherish it. So yeah, the personality is definitely huge, but the trust involved in it is critical as well. So when did Second Nature come into the picture? You're 100 episodes in. You're like, my life isn't busy enough. I'm going to add more. Aaron, let's do this thing.
So the story with this is, I guess I definitely have a problem in that I'm very fear motivated. Like I always think everything's going to fail and go to zero. And therefore I'm like, always like, oh, what else can we do? What else can we do? Et cetera.
Some might call that diversification of risk.
Yes. I guess that's
the accountants and investors listening might spin it that way.
A kinder way of saying it. So ever since I started Freetrail, because I didn't come from a media background, I'd never had a business education. I really took it seriously to like really learn, what are you doing? How do you do this? Who is doing something similar in a different category or a different sport, a different space? And, what are they doing well? What can I learn? And in that process, which is, now been 4 or 5 years, I learned that B2B media is, as opposed to consumer facing media, B2B media is a really interesting way to like build an audience, a community, and a business. And as I thought about it, I thought, number one, I really enjoy learning about business and learning from operators who've been through the fire. In a lot of ways, it's very similar to when I was reading Anton's blog, trying to learn how to be a professional trail runner. And in the outdoor space, there wasn't really anything that existed that was the format that we've kind of arrived at, where Aaron and I can talk candidly, transparently about what we're dealing with our respective businesses, but we can also bring on people like yourself, people who have been successful and who have a unique perspective and a valuable insight to share with other people who are striving to build something in their outdoor community, in our case. Aaron, like I said, is one of the most important people ever in my career. He's a great friend. I've learned more from him just in terms of how to be a professional athlete and how to think about building a career within sport more than anybody else. So he was a natural sidekick to pursue this with. He was also, a year and a half ago going through something very similar to what you've been going through more recently, in that he was ready to go on his own, to go all in. He's had a very popular and successful mountain biking YouTube channel, and he was ready to really pursue that with all of his effort instead of it being sort of a side project. And so around that time, it made sense for us to turn the mics on and start Second Nature. And yeah, it's been a really fun journey. We already crossed 100 episodes, which is crazy. We definitely speed ran our way there. And Aaron has definitely been more of the hardworking force behind it, just by virtue of the fact that I've just been so freaking busy recently. But I am both surprised and not surprised at the way that it's taken off. Like, people genuinely seem to enjoy it. Aaron and I definitely enjoy doing it. And I think the sky's the limit. In a lot of ways, I think it has a lot more potential than Freetrail does, which makes me excited, but also nervous. And that's part of the other reason why I'd say, like, I really don't know what the future looks like, because I have a few things going on right now and I want to do everything, but I definitely can't. And I'm coming more and more around to that reality. And so, decisions will need to be made in the future. And right now, Second Nature is very much just a non-monetized side project. And if it ever was going to be more than that, I think it has the potential to be a lot more than that. But it would be at the expense of Freetrail, and that's certainly not a sacrifice I'm willing to make at this point.
This episode comes out on June 17th. Can you speak about the super secret project yet?
No, I can't. I can tell you offline, but this is...
You tell me to take a hike.
This is good. Okay, so the original idea of Second Nature is like, okay, we can do like the one-on-one shows where it's just Aaron and I catching up. We can bring people like yourself on and have a guest and talk about what they're up to. And then also, third is like, we're going to build our own consumer product, and we're going to use Second Nature as the storytelling apparatus to show people, to quote unquote build in public our own thing. That has now become an obnoxiously long inside joke that we, refer to as the secret project. I mean, I'm very excited about it still. I remain very excited about it, but it's going to take some space in my life in order to like really make progress on it. And so one of the things we've talked about is like, we have good designs, we just need sort of somebody to run with it. And we don't know exactly what to do with it yet.
I'm familiar with what it is, and the ability to distribute all of the channels that you have. It's like a no-brainer type situation. We've talked at length about, the creator economy or creators as founders. And I had conversations with Megan and team at Slow Ventures, and they're doing some really cool stuff over there, investing in people who have a product to sell to their community. And they have something that, if you have something that you're passionate about and you have an audience who might be interested in it, what's the point of, providing an affiliate link when you can take the whole thing, right? Like, own the destiny. And, instead of making 10% margin, you make 40% margin, 50% margin, and you have skin in the game, and you're incentivized to do more with it than just a, brand partnership. There are a couple of brands that I've been working with or that I've been advising where it's really fun to have vested interest in the success of the company versus just having a desire to extend the contract one more cycle or two more cycles.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a business model that I've been deeply enamored with for a long time. When we do put things on sale, they do seem to move. And so if we were able to leverage our audience and distribution to sell another product, I think it's a very interesting way to build a business. I think that's where Freetrail would actually become something that did have long-term staying power, but it's a lot more complicated than it sounds. And especially because the nature of the type of product that we're trying to build, it's definitely just not easy.
And you've got to nail it the first time.
I was listening to a podcast recently that said, when you add complexity on top of complexity, what you get is a shit show. Our business is already insanely complex. Second Nature's sort of a side hustle, but it takes time. If we start this thing, and that will be incredibly complex, what I don't want is my life to become even more of a shit show than it already is.
Fair enough. Yeah, the creator as founder piece is super fascinating if you can do it in the avoidance of turning everything into a shit show. I've been doing some work here in Boulder with Colleen Quigley. I know you spoke with her, and I cannot wait to hear that conversation. And I know you guys told her that things would change and plans would change, and she won't expect the changes that happen. Like, that's already happening. And you spoke to her 2 weeks ago. I'm going through the podcast that I did with her in March, and it's funny to hear the things that have changed. But again, going back to an athlete or a creator with an audience, if you think about somebody like that, or you think about somebody with 300,000 Instagram followers, like a 1% conversion on a $50 to $100 annual purchase is a nice chunk of change that you can build a lifestyle business around. And then it gets to the like, okay, well, do I just operate this as a 1 or 2 man operation, or do we scale it to, bring on investors and then have investors want to see returns? And it's just like, it's fascinating to watch these brands develop in the space where I'm also building something that we haven't even talked about that we will talk about in person, probably.
Whoa.
But I'm like, I want to think that I can hold myself to building a nice lifestyle business versus like a desire to scale it to $100 million. Like,
Yep.
who needs $100 million?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an important thing to talk about is you do have to have a sense of what the ultimate goal of the project is. And like, as I look at Freetrail, for example, it is already just a good, solid lifestyle business. And I think that's going to be its ceiling, more or less. I mean, you say it's bigger than me, but without me and our team, it has no value, right? So it's not as if it's a situation where you could sell it in the future, nor, frankly, do I feel like I would probably have that desire to do it, at least at this point. And so what are you doing it for? And it's like, I think that's an ever evolving question for founders is, if you're optimizing for, a good lifestyle, you operate the business in one way. If you operate for a potential exit in the future, you operate it another way. And I think we've maybe gotten a little bit lost in the middle there where, we haven't yet gotten to a place where we don't have an optimal lifestyle. But also we don't necessarily have something that has scale or, massive future upside. And so that's kind of one of the things that we wrestle with all the time is like, how long can we work this hard? Do we really want to be working this hard? If we work less hard, what would the economic impacts be to our business? And are we willing to make that sacrifice too? So I don't know. I think that's an important point that founders have to grapple with every day when building a business.
Totally. My take on it is like, I'm optimizing for ownership of my schedule, and I want to be able to do what I want when I want. And that to me is the ultimate luxury. And everything I'm building for is to be able to have stability around that. And kind of the rest falls into place from there. Relationships, friendships, all that stuff becomes much easier and straightforward. And
I like that. I mean, I think the lesson here is then that you have to put legitimate consideration into what you are optimizing for. And in your case, freedom over your schedule, it's really not something that I have. And maybe that is something that I should be optimizing more for, often feeling in a reactive posture than in a proactive posture, or just feeling like I'm never able to catch up or clear the calendar, so to speak. Yeah, anyway, I think it's just, again, it's a challenge that all founders have to negotiate and navigate through themselves. And, it's going to always be a process. It's probably one of those things where you never feel like you fully figure it out.
Totally. Speaking of schedules, coming up next week, TrailCon. Next week, as in if you're listening to this, listening to this today on June 17th, it is next week.
It's like, God.
Yeah. Surprise. It's June 10th. You and Brendan Madigan and a handful of other characters have put this together. I missed it last year because I had COVID and missed TrailCon and pacing Sally McRae at Western States. And I missed a monster of a time out in Tahoe last year for it. But I'll be there this year. What is TrailCon? Why is this something you're putting your eggs in the basket of?
In the early stages of Freetrail, I got a cold DM outreach from a guy named Doug Emsley, who, unbeknownst to me at the time, was one of the biggest, most influential people in like the conference and trade show world. And he's also just a passionate runner and just a delightful, amazing guy. He's a Scottish dude. He spends most of his time in London, but travels around the world. He had a business in the UK where he was a CEO called Tarsus. He sold it a few years ago. And so he's sort of been in this like post-acquisition window of time where he's, forging this next chapter of his life. And he's become like a dear friend of mine and somebody whose opinion I solicit on any number of problems that we're dealing with at Freetrail. And of course, from the earliest days, I was like, well, dude, like we gotta just have a trail running conference. I mean, I owned trailconference.com for many years. And we learned at a certain point probably 2 years ago that Brendan Madigan was sort of having similar ideas. And Brendan, of course, is the race director of the Broken Arrow Sky Race, also the founder and owner of, I guess, just the owner of Alpenglow Sports in Tahoe City. Also a great friend and somebody who I deeply, deeply admire and respect. So, it made sense for the three of us to kind of join forces on the project. And we kicked things off last year with just a soft launch we called the Taste of TrailCon. It was about 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon of panel discussions, ultimately with the vision of launching this year, which we will be doing at the end of June in between Broken Arrow and Western States in Palisades, Tahoe, with 2 full-day conference, trade show, festival that includes all sorts of different activations, conversations, keynotes, happy hours, group runs, all the types of things that you would want from like an industry event. We hope it has both kind of B2B and B2C relevant content and also relevant participation and attendees. And really what we hope is that, and one of the things I've learned from Doug is that oftentimes in categories, in markets, in sectors, communities that are in transition, it's really important to have things like this. And I think you and I would both agree that trail running is definitely in a moment of transition right now. And so if we can position something to be of service to the community at this important moment where we can provide a platform for dialogue and debate about all the issues that are going on, where we can have, education, where we can, further deepen the passion and love that people have for the sport, if we can help people like you and I who are trying to have a successful living and career within the sport, then TrailCon, we hope, can serve all those many purposes. And so, we're going to be launching June 24th and 25th this year. We just announced the agenda as we're recording now yesterday. I'm really excited. We've got the belief and the participation of many amazing people, yourself included. The content itself looks spectacular end to end, both days. And we also have the belief of some of the biggest and best brands in the sport who are making this possible at the end of the day. So maybe just to wrap up this long-winded answer, On is going to be launching their new trail running super shoe, the Cloud Ultra Pro, at TrailCon this year in our inaugural year, which feels like a big vote of confidence for what we're building. And it hasn't been announced yet, JL. So this may be news to you, but Nike ACG is going to be sponsoring an award show on the second night, which is going to include the official launch and the induction of the inaugural class of the Trail Running Hall of Fame, which we hope we can build tradition around, where on the second night of TrailCon going forward, it always culminates with the induction of a new class of Hall of Fame members. And this is just part of something that Freetrail's tried to do over the course of time, of just like, how do we deepen the way people experience the sport? How do we make people fans? How do we celebrate the past, present, and get excited about the future all at the same time? And TrailCon is a manifestation of all that.
TrailCon's also been something that the people who attend both Broken Arrow and Western States have been craving for years. Right? Like, fill the void, please. Yep. Dating back to probably 2017, I've spent 10 days in Tahoe. I fly in the Wednesday before Broken Arrow and I fly out the Sunday of Western States 11 days later.
Yep.
You go through the Broken Arrow weekend and Sunday afternoon, you're exhausted. I've been running the 26K. So I run my race on Sunday and Monday is day of rest. And then it's like, okay, what do we do on Tuesday? And what do we do on Wednesday? And then things ramp back up on Thursday. And so this is filling not just like getting people to go somewhere different and fly and rent a car and rent Airbnb, but like you're already there. You're just like, you've got a captive audience. And so the ability to do something with that captive audience is wonderful. And I'm sure tons of people will come to Western States earlier because of TrailCon.
Yeah. That was certainly part of our calculus as well, as somebody who's been going to Western States for 13 years at this point. Yeah, we recognize an opportunity of like, people are here, like, let's bring everybody here together and have the important conversations that we need to. And also just like enjoy each other's company. Like, let's do stuff, whether it's a group run or like a networking event or how can we give a place where like freelancer creatives in the sport have an opportunity to go bump elbows with some of the brand people and have everybody sort of get a little bit tighter knit so that we can forge a positive future for the sport. That's the ambitious goal and mission that we have. And we're admittedly going into it not really knowing what to expect, but feeling confident that what we're trying to provide needs to exist, and that the participants and attendees will feel the same way.
Totally. So I'm leading a panel Tuesday afternoon. I believe it's 4:25 on the professionalization of trail running teams. You are someone who has been on a professional trail running team. I guess I'll ask you here, what are you hoping to hear from me on that panel?
Well, I think one of the most interesting trends in the sport is how these brands are building out support systems and networks around their athlete teams to help them be more successful on the race course. So, it was recently announced that Salomon had this new athlete performance program where they brought in this physiologist who came from professional cycling, who's been very successful at like the Tour de France at the highest level. And he's now building out this architecture around the Salomon team. Of course, they can do some marketing around that and there's value in it. But ultimately, the value in that is giving your athletes a better chance of winning and being successful on the world's biggest stages. And I think that's just a really cool thing that's happening in the sport, and also a signal of the maturation of where we are. And I think it's just ripe territory for you to do some surgery and get to know these people a little bit more and see if you can't extract some insights as to what the future might look like over the next 5 or 10 years as this becomes more and more entrenched. I think also, the way the sport is globalizing, where are they finding their talent? How are they interfacing with emerging markets like China and Latin America, broader Asia, I guess I should say. That stuff I think is fascinating. And, it's the type of conversation that fits perfectly with TrailCon, and we're honored that you would lead it.
Totally. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. There are a couple of teams that come to mind, or a couple of brands that come to mind along those lines. So Scratch has been a huge supporter of athletes and goes, above and beyond they don't just pay people, they don't just give them product, but they help them use it. They help them troubleshoot, and they do the sweat tests, and they do all this stuff. And I know I have a handful of friends that are on that athlete team, and they speak so highly of the dietitians and Dr. Alan Lim and all the people involved. And then a couple of days ago, I was on with Brad, the athlete manager for Precision, talking with an athlete who I'm doing some work with to help find some brand partners. Brad was talking us through the level of support that Precision provides to their athletes. They give them tons of product, obviously, but more importantly, they set them up with a sweat test. They set them up with, I think they have 7 physios or sports scientists. It was literally like a menu of like, what type of sports scientist do you want? Do you want someone who's good at sweat rate? Do you want someone who's good at, moving up in distance? You want someone who's good at heat, like weather challenges? And I was like, this is crazy. You have like not just a tool for the job, but like a specialized tool for every job. If an athlete has a specific challenge, then we're going to match them with a person that's going to help them maximize. And it's great to provide the athlete with that resource. And it's also great because then the athlete has a better experience in representing the brand and a better chance at a podium and doing well on behalf of the brand. And ultimately, everybody wins from it. And the way that, in particular, Precision and Scratch have been talking about like high carb fueling and the education around electrolytes and all that, it's just really advancing things forward. And they have such cool use cases of guys like Hayden and what they're doing. The way that David Roche talks about what he's doing, and he's just a one big science experiment at this point. It's really cool to see this level of investment in the science behind it and the support behind it, and everybody wins.
Yeah. No, I think, again, it's just a macro trend in the sport that I feel like is just starting now, and that in the next 5 or 10 years is going to become table stakes for every brand.
Right.
And so, again, what a perfect opportunity to kind of get that conversation started publicly then at TrailCon with yourself and the great panelists that we have.
Well, sticking on the topic of athlete sponsorship, and I know we're over our initial hour, but do you have a few more minutes here?
Yeah.
Cool. Great. I wrote in a question to you guys on Second Nature, which you so kindly answered. I don't know if you remember the question, but it was, what would you do if you were 23-year-old Dylan as a new pro today? I want to flip the question back to you in a different way and say, I'm going to guess that there are more brand marketers and marketers listening to this than 23-year-old athletes. So you've been in the space for, as you said, 17 years. What is your call to action to brands in order to be better, in order to continue to drive the sport forward while focusing on enabling athletes to perform?
The thing that immediately comes to mind is communication. And you could look at it in two different ways. Starting with kind of the internal facing communication. As a pro athlete, I think one of the things that I was always hungry for, though I guess I didn't really ever explicitly ask for it, is like more of an education about my impact. I think it is a missed opportunity that brand people, sports marketing people don't sit their athlete team down and say, these are our core goals and initiatives and priorities of the business. Here's how you guys can orient yourselves to help us with that. And if we're successful in achieving this, it will have a positive benefit to you and your career and your longevity with the brand. The brand's health leads to the higher likelihood that we will be able to maintain this great partnership. That type of communication, I don't think really exists, or at least doesn't exist enough. And I think brands could do a better job with that, specifically with professional athletes. Thinking of it from the other direction too, and like public facing, we just recorded a Second Nature that will be out by the time your listeners hear this with Alex King, who started a new brand called Terragnota, where he shares just incredible transparency into where he is with his business now, including all the numbers. He's only 6 months in, so it's still very early. But it seemed to me one of my epiphanies on the show was that his brand is transparency. And I think it's going to ultimately be so powerful for him. And I think brands could do better with that stuff. And, you know, there's so much marketing and storytelling either comes off as like too much like an ad or like performative in a way that doesn't feel authentic. Just being a real person and communicating clearly and like sharing the uncertainty that you feel. I don't know. I think that would resonate also with a consumer audience. So I don't know. I think communication both internally and externally is what I would advise brands to do better.
I love that so much. Specifically the first part of what you were saying. So anytime I do a brand partnership, in my like agreement with the brand, I put in a midway check-in. I want to know, is my coupon code doing anything? How do you think we're doing? Do you like the content that's being shared? In the first meeting, I will have understood what the goals of that brand are. So I want to understand, am I here for awareness? Am I here for consideration? Or am I here for conversion, right? The 3 stages of the funnel. And I think I talked about it on Second Nature. Like if you're a brand trying to do all 3 with a partner, you're going to fail. You get 2 of those, maybe. And so in any partnership I do, I will have already established what the goal is and how we define success around that. So for me, it's like mission critical to understand what is the impact I'm having. And so I find that the brands that I have a quicker turnaround of understanding of results. So I'm partnered with a brand that sells 17 products. Well, what are the 3 products that my audience is buying? And do I love those products more than the others? And should I promote them even more than the other one that nobody's buying, right? Like that feedback loop is essential. And maybe a shoe brand doesn't have the same level of visibility as an e-commerce only brand because the shoes are purchased, you know, in store or they're purchased online without a coupon code or whatever. You don't know the downline impact, but there are still ways to measure success. And directionally, the brand does know like what is the impact that this person is having. And they should tell them what that impact is so that not just so you can say this is a pass, this is a fail, but to refine in the ongoing relationship.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we actually just had one of those midway check-ins with one of our partners yesterday. And actually Harmony did another one today with another one of our partners. And I think, you know, it's really important, you know, it's a two-way street and it's important to just have honesty, transparency, and just like human relationship in the mix there.
Totally. I'm looking at my list and making sure I am checking it twice and hitting every topic I wanted to hit with you here. One thing that you guys say often on the pod is business is hard. Yes, business is hard. I think that's sometimes what makes it fun. Talk to me about the curiosity around doing this hard thing. You've run 100-mile races. you can do hard things. Like, how often do you think about the fact that you're just really fucking good at doing hard things?
It's so funny because the hard stuff in business feels 100x harder to me than like even the worst moments in my athletic career. And I don't know why that is. I honestly think it's a personal disposition where somebody else running my company would do it much better, or who was dealing with the same level of uncertainty and stress and overwhelm would navigate that better than I do. I just don't think I'm cut out for it in some way. Like, I mean that psychologically and emotionally.
But you've been doing it for a while and you keep putting in the reps.
I was just coming around to say the reason why I feel we have gotten through that valley of uncertainty and that Freetrail is established and objectively successful is because I have a long history of putting myself through shit, and I don't quit easily. That has definitely behooved me as we have, really been pushing this boulder up a hill for several years at this point. So, yeah, I think, there's a reason we always say business is hard on the podcast, and that's because it really is. But as you said, like, it is part of the fun, and really anything worth doing does have that type of, suffering attached to it. And there's no question that, again, it's the hardest and most rewarding and most educational thing that I've ever done. And that's why I think I probably come off as emphasizing the negative aspects of it more than I want to, because I do think that there's a lot of value in at least trying for some people. And I'm really proud that you're making that step yourself now here, and you've got all the tools to be successful, including a long history of, being great at what you do. The reality, though, is that even with talent, skill, determination, I think it takes 3 years of agony, suffering, and uncertainty before you even start to see progress. At least that was my experience. That's just the reality of it. And you have to be willing to go through that if you're going to start something. Like, if you're not willing to go through that, you shouldn't start something.
As David Lamb once said, quoting Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah. That's one of Lutzie's favorite quotes too.
The last 5 minutes is the summary of the first 2 sentences of the trailer that I wrote for this podcast. The outdoor industry runs on big ideas, relentless energy, and people who don't quit easily. Sound familiar? You just described that. That's the epitome of business at the intersection of endurance and entrepreneurship. And I'm so grateful that this is one of the first conversations that will be out there in the world on Long Run Labs podcast. And I have unfortunately set the bar a little high, but I hope people tune in next Tuesday for the next episode.
JL, it's an honor to join you. Good luck with this new endeavor. I appreciate you having me on.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Dylan, and we'll see you out there. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Long Run Labs. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building something of their own. We'll be back next Tuesday with more stories at the intersection of endurance and entrepreneurship from the people shaping the outdoor industry in ways big and small. Until then, keep showing up, keep asking questions, and we'll see you out there. This show is produced by Dylan Delaney of Delaney Video LLC, with musical composition by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound, and managed overall by Emily Holland of Wild Poppy Creative.